Spiderman Across the Spiderverse is about to release, and one thing I love about the art style of this series is that you can pause at any moment and it looks like an illustration straight out of a comic book. As a 3D artist myself, I got inspired and wanted to create my own Spider-Verse animation, but instead of trying to only copy the original style, every frame is a different art style. During this project, I not only learned how the animators created this amazing style, but also how you can create all of this in a free 3D software called Blender. Before we can start animating, we need something or someone to animate. First, I created a rough version of Miles in his suit, basically just a placeholder doll that I can then turn into all the various styles I have in mind, and to animate it, I can add an armature or a skeleton to it. I had a few ideas for what he could do during the animation. Him just walking is kind of boring. A fight scene is a bit too complex, so my idea was to show him web swinging through some sort of environment. Now for the environment, I wanted to keep it as simple as possible so that I can spend the majority of my time on Miles himself. But there's a problem. I gave myself 7 days for this project. Let's say one frame takes me 2 hours. If I work and sleep with no breaks for 7 days straight, I could finish a 2-second animation. But there's another problem. I'm human, I think. So that's not gonna happen. And that's where the animation technique from the movie called animating on twos comes into play. Animating on twos means that the frame for the environment changes every frame, but the frame from Miles only changes every second frame. So he would be animated on twos. Which brings down the amount of frames I had to create from 48 to 24. In the movie, it's used to show struggle or uncertainness, but I'll use it to save some time. And with the base animation in place, it is time to stylize. I wanted to start with my own style to get used to the workflow, so the first frame will be realistic-ish. The anatomy of the base mesh gave me a good starting point, but I definitely had to refine it manually to get it to a point where I was happy with it. I also hadn't sculpted a full body character for a while, so this was a great opportunity to dust off my anatomy knowledge a bit. After an hour of muscle-lification, it was time for the colors, which are actually pretty simple for this new version of him. People keep complaining about the oversimplification of brand logos, and meanwhile we go from an intricate spiderweb to a line. Afterwards, I used a simple texture to make it look like his suit is actually made out of fabric, and the first frame is done. The next style comes from Ilya Krushinov. I've already recreated this style in my first video of this art style series, but I just love the use of colors in his illustrations, so I had to include him again. To bring his 2D style to 3D, I actually painted the lights and shadows onto the model rather than using actual 3D lines, which gives it a more painterly look, but also results in these weird nipples on his head. They're supposed to be reflections, okay? I'm not the best at hand painting light. Maybe a lighting setup from both angles also wasn't the best idea. And last but not least, I added a nice bold outline to make it look even more like an illustration. While I was looking for references on Google, I found this shot. For the last style, I had to paint the lighting myself, so let's do the complete opposite for this one and get rid of all the lights. Just pure colors and shapes. Actually, I was lying, I added one color variation. I thought that just looked better. Speaking of shapes, at this point I also realized that I had to refine the base model's anatomy for almost every frame. So just know that while you may not see it, I had to sculpt his juicy thighs almost 24 times. I don't know if that's a loss for me or for you. This guy from the trailer was the next style I wanted to recreate. This newspaper style not only has more desaturated colors, but also replaces the basic smooth shadows with this dotted screen tone pattern. This pattern is used when you're printing stuff like newspapers or comic books to be able to create gradients for shadows, for example. So the shader of the model looks at the brightness of the light and determines how big the dots will be. The darker the area, the bigger the dots. This pattern is being used a lot for the bright areas in the movie. It will also reappear in a few future styles during this project. For this style, I thought it's fitting to not only use it for the highlights, but also for the shadows to nail that newspaper look. My next inspiration was this poster of the movie, specifically this guy. I love this super bold and gritty graffiti style, so my first idea was to paint over the 3D model in Photoshop, but that wasn't actually necessary. One goal I had for this project was to see whether I can create all the extra effects in Blender itself. I tried placing a plane in front of the camera, and now by drawing onto that plane with a few custom brushes, it actually looks like I'm drawing right onto the 3D scene. Of course, this style wouldn't work for a longer animation without having to redraw everything on every frame, but for a single shot I think it looks pretty great. After the basic colors were done, I added a basic grunge texture on top to add some more grittiness, and to elevate the style to the next level, I duplicated the color planes, changed their color slightly, and offset them from the original. That created this cool color separation which made the whole thing look so much better. I don't want to explain every style because that gets kind of boring and repetitive, so let's speed through the next 5.
Upside down and in and out, I guess I have to take a break. Get out of your comfort zone, it's a blessing in disguise. Get out of what you call home, your name is written in the sky. It might feel just like you're on your own, but baby, it's another lie. Remember you were made. That's right, now I've had enough. Your bad behavior isn't what I'm worth, no, that's right. Now I've had enough. You don't see it, but I see it. Ooh, reminds me you're you bitter, speaking with a different native tongue. You're egocentric, I'm a bootlicker. You don't ever get it.
As someone that has practically lived in Minecraft for the first few years of high school, there's one question that I ask myself all the time. How can I create this with nothing but blocks? In Blender, that's actually pretty simple. You just apply a remesh modifier to your model and set it to block mode. And after giving the blocks the spider suit pattern, it is basically done. But I wanted to go a bit further, so I added some sub-silver scattering to make the light shine through the blocks and create this cool translucent effect. At some point in graphic design school, I heard a simple design principle that Apple is supposed to follow for all their products. Every curve follows a straight line. I don't know if that was real or I remembered it correctly, but it gave me this style idea. Every curve follows another curve, resulting in this very angular Spider-Man. And to spice it up a bit more, I scraped off the edges because why not? Here in Germany, when I was younger, I remember the kids were separated into two groups. Lego and the one that had Lego but worse. Luckily, my parents actually loved me and turned me into an avid Lego enjoyer, which is why I wanted to create one frame made purely out of Lego bricks. There's no specific modifier for that, but you can create your own using a simple geometry node setup. If you want to try it yourself, check out the link in the description. Some styles like this one didn't take that long, but they gave me even more time for the frames that needed it. One that definitely didn't need it is the next one. After creating the voxel frame, I couldn't stop thinking about all the custom Minecraft skins I made back in the day. So why don't I add an actual Minecraft frame as well? I grabbed the original Minecraft Steve model off of Sketchfab, posted in the pose of the base mesh, and repainted its textures. Here's a quick tip from a Minecraft skin veteran. Using only flat colors looks kind of boring. Instead, add a few variations to every color. That adds a whole lot more depth to it. And just like that, the craft has been mined.
Watch it, now I ain't talking my pockets, just know we ain't running out the way that we stock it. If I got it, you got it. If I call it shit.
This collection of styles wouldn't feel complete without trying to recreate the original style as well. There are definitely more than one art style that they've used, but for the main one I used this poster once again as reference. Looking at him, there are three big parts that make up this style. First, on top of the basic model, we have these extra lines that add a bit more texture to the surface, or during the animation express effects like speed or force. Next, the screen tone pattern is back. In the show, it's used to give a comic book feel to the highlights of the model, so I did the same for my frame in addition to another layer of transparent white, which also added to this comic book look. And to finish it all off, the animators added these straight lines to the shadows. For this, I could just reuse the shadows for the highlights, replace the dotted pattern with lines, and make it affect the shadows instead of the highlights. There's definitely more that goes into the Spiderverse style, but even just these three effects look pretty cool. The last style I want to highlight is the one that is too cool not to. I'm way too dumb to understand what happens behind the scenes, but Alan Wyatt created a geometry node system that can turn any 3D scene into an actual painting. So all I had to do was add the colors to the model, render it, and plug the image into his setup. If you want to check it out yourself, I'll leave a link to it in the description. The Spiderverse series shows in what unique ways you can develop your own art style, and maybe one of the ones I've shown today was exactly the one you're looking for. But if you haven't found the style yet that speaks to you, maybe it doesn't exist yet and you're the one that gets to create it. If you like this video, make sure to check out this video next. The first video in this series where I created myself in 11 different styles. Thanks for watching, maybe I'll see you next time. See ya!